This is America, the land we call home. For more than 200 years, Americans from coast to coast have relied on the land to provide shelter, food, clean air, and water. Our varied climate and rich soil have helped America take its place as the most productive country on the planet. But protecting our most basic assets of earth, water, and air isn't something we can take for granted. During the early years of agriculture and industrial production, the environment suffered through neglect and overwork. In our haste to build our economy and to feed the world, we didn't stop to see the damage we were doing to our environment. Fortunately, American ranchers and farmers recognized the need to protect the land and environment that we all rely on for so much. American ingenuity, American capitalism, and American pride began to reshape the way we raise our cattle and the way we treat our natural resources. Among the members of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, a handful of cattle producers have taken their operations to a new level of both productivity and environmental sensitivity. And they are this year's winners of the annual Environmental Stewardship Awards. Here in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, the 1,400-acre Wakefield Farm is home to a thriving commercial cow and calf operation and is a showcase for inventive ways to give the land new life. The farm had provided more than a century of cotton production, followed by soy and wheat crops. The soil had lost most of its nutrients and was eroding at a rate of 22 tons per acre per year. It was time for some new ideas.
When we came in 1981, the land was basically open. It's probably 60% of Wakefield is now open, or the whole farm. And it was in crops for the most part. There were a few pastures, but for the most part it was cropland. And when it was terraced, it would hold the water all right, or reasonably well. But after the terraces were plowed over, the water took the soil down to the creeks and right on out. So we decided after a few years of cultivating the soybeans and wheat that we would just begin specializing more in cattle.
Owners Dick and Julie Phillips recognized the need for a new way of thinking. As a businessman, Dick used his bottom-line approach to find new ways to meet the challenges of ranching.
It just makes good business sense to have nature as an ally rather than an adversary. And so we've tried to keep that spirit as we've gone along.
Dick's sense of history and American pride drove him to find better ways of working the land and building a more profitable ranch.
I was born exactly 200 years after a fellow named George Washington. And I've always loved history, and I've enjoyed reading about Mr. Washington, not as a president or as a general, but he was first and foremost a planter. My wife and I were talking about a name, and she said, well, you know, he was born at a place called Wakefield on the Potomac River. I have a great admiration for what he stood for, his integrity, and that's a word I think we're missing a lot in America. And what we try to do here at Wakefield, all of us, stay on the high road, tell the truth and shame the devil, work hard, and things just usually fall into place. That doesn't make it easy, but that's some of the philosophy we go by.
At 10 times the size, the Y-Bar-D Ranch is quite a contrast. Sitting on more than 15,000 acres of high desert land in Arizona, the Y-Bar-D runs the gamut from 3,800 feet in elevation to more than 7,000. The annual rainfall at lower elevations is only a meager 9 inches. Like Wakefield Farm, the land at the Y-Bar-D was in poor condition when George and Sharon Yard purchased it in 1991. Bordering on 4 miles of the Verde River, there was a tremendous need to protect the vital water resources of the river and the riparian areas that were home to a variety of local wildlife. George and Sharon took a scientific approach to restoring their land and increasing the productivity. They believe they're accountable for the land that they own, and the results they achieve must be measured and verified.
We do a thing that's called utilization survey. Utilization is done after the cattle leave a pasture. We come in and we actually plot out on our maps what areas have been grazed and how much have been grazed. We recognize there are certain areas that are being hit too hard, so the next year we do things to put them somewhere else when we come to that pasture, and we do it by feed distribution, fence distribution, water distribution, and then we herd.
Applying scientific techniques to their daily management of the ranch has allowed the yards to prove and improve their results.
We had tremendous success. I was surprised. As you look at the maps, you can see that we had very uneven distribution to start with, and at the end of a 4-year period, we were losing all the areas that were heavily grazed or extremely grazed. It was very satisfying to us to see that that was happening.
They believe solving environmental problems will help keep beef production here at home and keep America from losing business to third world countries with lower environmental standards.
We need to figure out ways of keeping our industries in this country, and livestock is one of the main things. You know, each year we keep importing more and more meats from other countries, and we don't need to do that. We have a resource here.
About 1,500 miles due north in the Big Belt Mountains of Montana, the Sieben Livestock Company rests between the Missouri and Smith rivers. No newcomers to ranching. The Hibbard family has operated the Sieben Livestock Company for 4 generations. The 3 great-grandsons of Henry Sieben carry on a family tradition of working to protect the land and all of the thousands of animals who call it home. In addition to the cattle and sheep raised by the Hibbard family, the ranch is home to a wide variety of wildlife. Managing all of the ranch's resources are a key factor in finding a balance between business and nature.
Everything we do, we try to do in a way that is compatible with the environment. And, you know, we have instituted grazing systems years ago, rest rotation grazing, so all of our summer range is under some sort of rotational grazing. So we're spreading out cattle through spring development, we're resting and deferring spring and fall grazing. And most recently, we've made a huge decision on the ranch to move from our traditional calving time of February and March to May 15th. Raising hay at our altitude with less than 90 frost-free days is a challenge. Our strength is our grass. That's our resource. So we're trying to gear the entire ranch around our strength, around our grass resource. So we feel by calving later, we can winter cows on more grass, less hay. The calves are being born at a time when Mother Nature is doing most of the work instead of us kicking out of the back of a pickup. And then the following year, when we have yearlings to run, we can utilize a lot more of our steep pastures better with yearlings than we can cow-calf.
On a ranch this size, income comes from a variety of sources, including a logging operation, oil and gas exploration, and the cattle and sheep herds. Managing so much land and so many different ventures while still protecting the environment and wildlife is no small task. But the Hibbard family has built their business on a respect for the land, a love of animals, and a clear perspective on the ranch's place in history.
We are managing for the future. We're not stocking the ranch as heavily as it could be. We're resting a portion of the ranch each year through rest rotation grazing. Our logging operation, we're managing for the future. We're managing it for levels that we feel are sustainable, and yet we're hoping to preserve, to enhance, and to improve this resource, so actually we can hand off a resource that's in better condition when at the end of our watch, when our job is done, a better resource than what we received, we can hand off to the next generation.
For more than 100 years, the operators of Goodson Ranch have also worked hard to leave something better to the next generation. The Goodson Ranch overlooks the Arkansas River and Kaw Lake near the Kansas and Oklahoma borders. At over 6,500 acres, there's room for both cattle and farming, but the family must contend with soil conditions that range from silt to limestone. The ranch is near the Kaw Lake, which is part of a municipal water supply, so conservation and water quality are key factors in how the ranch is run.
We feel it's very important to limit the amount of sediment in the water that leaves this place, and we really don't want to have that much water leave it. We've got some streams and some springs that are continuously flowing, so obviously they're going to have continuous runoff into the Arkansas. What we do to make sure that the sediment is as small as possible, we fence off some of our streams. We put fences around some of our ponds to limit the amount of tracking that the cattle do in and around it. They don't have to have the whole pond or the whole stream to have a good water supply. If they have two places, it might even help disperse their grazing.
Like all of the winners of the Environmental Stewardship Award, the Goodson Cannon family is willing to think outside of the box as they explore new ways to increase productivity and increase environmental effectiveness.
There's a little bit of crust, but then again, this is the first year it's been in no-till. So you can expect that. It's not much different than conventional ground yet. Each year that would get a whole lot better, but it's still much more mellow than if it had been worked. I spend a lot of time in research, and I do on every decision that we make out here. You just have to. Going no-till, it's a huge change, and there's a big impact on your finances. So we had to make sure that it was the right decision.
Thinking outside of the box isn't confined to west of the Mississippi. Here at Armstrong Farms in western Pennsylvania, John and Kathy Allen, along with their two sons, have reconfigured their entire operation. Now totally focused on purebred Black Angus and purebred shorthorned cattle production, this new way of thinking has resulted in a healthier environment and a healthier bottom line. The old days of planting hundreds of acres of row crops have disappeared, along with the old seven-bottom plow.
The great asset that the early settlers had was grass, and we believe that in their wisdom they plowed it up and plowed it all up and planted corn. And that may have worked 100 years ago, but it sure doesn't work now. Our environment is conducive to grass, our soils grow grass. We allow our cattle to harvest 7 months of the year, and our goal is to prolong that.
This 1,000 acres of eastern farmland is fighting to stay ahead of the march of urban sprawl. Today, the land surrounding the farm is dotted with subdivisions, industrial parks, and expanding highways. To ensure that the land will remain open, almost 350 acres have been dedicated to the Pennsylvania Farm Preservation Easement. The Allen family sees themselves as caretakers of the land, managing a rich natural resource. They're working hard to leave something better for the next generation.
When we started the environmental stewardship practices, it wasn't because it became something that was fashionable. We actually started to rotationally graze in the 70s, and people raised their eyebrows and said, "What are you doing?" We set out with some very specific goals. We would sit down and say, what do we want to do with this land? How do we want to create something that we could enjoy not only during our lifetime, but during our children's lifetime?
As Jim and Mary Bradford assembled the parcels of land in their 1,000-acre ranch in western Iowa, their primary concern was to provide a good place to raise a family. Over the last 30 years, the ranch has been an ideal place for the family to work together and for the children to learn to respect the land and nature. Through the decades, there have been some tough times. Interest rates and heavy debt load threatened the farm and the Bradford family's way of life. But the Bradfords met the challenge head-on, finding new ways to make their land profitable.
We had 120 acres that we had bought shortly after we came here, and person was running around 20 cows on the whole 120 acres on it. After we'd started managing it, well, we're running now like 80 head on that same piece of ground that we had been running 20 head, you know.
The natural slope of the land created erosion problems and made traditional crop farming almost impossible. but the sloping land was well suited to grassland farming and cattle grazing.
There's a benefit to be gained from not only building up the soil, but also building up the return from that soil.
Even at more than 20,000 acres, the Kelly Ranch is a family business, and it's been that way for 117 years. Located in western Nebraska, along the North Platte River, the Kelly operation is actually 2 ranches, just about 15 miles apart. The land they occupy is unique and environmentally sensitive. Located at the southern edge of the Nebraska sandhills, rolling sand dunes, steep slopes, and fragile riparian areas create constant challenges for Mike and Cynthia Kelly.
The Nebraska sandhills is very unique in that it makes up an area 3 times the size of Massachusetts. And of course it is made up of sand. And we are in a fairly low rainfall area of 15 to 16 inches a year. But it makes it for an excellent grassland for our cattle. But it is a very fragile ecosystem which does require good management to take care of that resource.
Using ecologically sound business practices is just a natural way of life for the Kellys. The frail environment demands special attention, but Mike and Cynthia have learned with a little extra care and some clever ranching techniques, the beautiful Midwestern ranch can produce impressive results.
Environmental stewardship and ranching go hand in hand, and today, to be a successful rancher or even to be a profitable rancher, you have to be a good steward of your natural resource.
Managing the environment for any rancher begins at the ground level. Most ranchers are also farmers to one degree or another. Some grow their own crops like wheat, corn, and soybeans with the intention of selling it as a cash crop. Others just want to use it as feed for their cattle operations. But some ranchers have reduced or eliminated traditional row crops by using no-till growing, overseeding, or allowing farmland to become pasture land.
All these things collectively go together to enhance the bottom line.
No-tilling has provided us with the opportunity to go in and overseed a lot of our permanent sod in winter annuals and also summer annuals, conserving energy, reducing soil erosion, and providing us with additional grazing throughout the season where a crop that we no-till into may not provide grazing for a specific time of the year. And it's really worked out great for us.
All winners of the Environmental Stewardship Awards see the advantages in using grass as feed and allowing the land to return to pasture land. As valuable as the soil is to a rancher, there's probably no more precious a commodity than water. It can be the difference between a good year and a bad year, between profit and loss, and even between survival and failure. But for years, many Americans have taken water sources for granted.
I think almost all western ranches have trouble with having enough water, and that causes troubles with not having even distribution.
These days, ranchers like Chase Hibbert at the Sieben Livestock Company have used proactive, environmentally friendly management practices.
What you're seeing here is an electric fence between these 2 tanks. These tanks will draw cattle to areas that are quite a ways from established water sources. So they will improve cattle distribution, improve water quantity and quality, and they will draw cattle away from areas of heavy use where they would stand around in water, generally in a riparian area.
When I first put in a water tank, most of the farmers and ranchers in the area said, Phillips, you lost your mind. You know, they've got water to drink in the creeks, just let them go to the creeks. But for whatever reason, we decided that we thought it would be best in the long run not to do that. And so we started with one, and now I think there are about 30 tanks on the place, and it's worked very well.
Ranchers who see the big picture, the increased productivity, the reduced costs, the healthier land and water, understand the advantages of working with their environment rather than just using it. These family ranchers are in this business for the long haul, and they're building operations that'll thrive for generations to come. Most folks in the ranching business aren't here for the money. The work is hard, and a bad year could put you out of business. But there's something more important here. It's a love of nature and animals. It's why you get up early in the morning, and why you go to bed with the window open at night.
You just have a sense of being close to nature, being close to God. That's the way I feel, you know. He made this, and it gives you a great appreciation for our world and for everything that's around us.
At the Kelly Ranch in Nebraska, Mike and Cynthia Kelly use the wildlife populations as a gauge for the health of the environment. They see the growing populations of deer, antelope, and birds as a sign that a thriving cattle operation can live in harmony with nature.
Anytime that you see wildlife and that they're doing well and perhaps their numbers are maintaining or increasing, we get pleasure out of that and know that we're doing a good job.
On many of the ranches, the presence of wildlife habitats, healthy waterways, and well-managed stands of timber and forest land can mean extra income from hunting or tourism.
There is an underlying aspect that you can't put your finger on, that agriculture and tourism go hand in hand. The last thing that I think Kathy and I ever thought we'd be involved with is any aspect of tourism or a bed and breakfast. But once again, the interaction of the economic, the environmental has worked out, and the bed and breakfast is now an integral part of Armstrong Farms. We don't do it because it's fashionable, and we don't do it because it's trendy. We do it because it makes money.
We're looking at ways that maybe we can diversify our income a little bit. This is the business we're in. This is our primary business. This will always be our primary business. This is where our heart is. But we're looking at other things, like we're exploring a wind farm on the ranch right now. It'll be one of 3 in the state if the negotiation is successful. That'll bring in consistent income year to year. It'll harness a resource that is an aggravation at times. It'll be nice to be harvesting something from it.
For all of the ranchers, the clean air and thriving wildlife all add up to quality of life.
We live out in the boondocks because my husband has a congenital defect, and it's called cattle. And for some reason or other, through osmosis, I think I acquired the same thing.
Cattle weights continue to increase at virtually every ranch of this year's award winners. At the Wakefield Farm, steers average 631 pounds. Over at the Goodson Ranch, stocker calves are weighing in at over 450 pounds. And at the Brad Z Ranch, Jim Bradford's records show a gain of 480 pounds of calf per acre. Productivity, reduced costs, and a stronger environment can go hand in hand.
You know, the improvements that you see are long-term. And especially, you know, I think the big thing that helps you is on drought years like this year, that it does allow those plants at least some rest during that summer. And what we hope to see, you know, in a few years of natural precipitation would be maybe a kick of 10 to 15% allowance in increased stocking numbers on those pastures.
In cattle production, it's all about pounds of beef per acre. We backed off of our cow-calf operation because our feed bills were huge all through the winter whenever it was dormant. And we went to an intensive double stocking where we bring in a whole lot of calves for a short amount of time and get more pounds of beef per acre.
This type of entrepreneurial style is what American business is all about. These ranch owners haven't made their operations more environmentally sensitive because it's the easy way out, or because they expect another check from the government. What they want is the freedom to find new ways to succeed and to survive. They want the freedom to run their cattle operations their way.
I think I'm probably as resistant as anybody to change, but at the same time, I certainly look over my neighbor's fence, and I try to read as many trade magazines as I can, and try to look at some of the new ideas and technologies that are going on. And if they make sense in our environment, we're certainly willing to make some changes.
I had a guy that a very big farmer, and he commented to me about 3 or 4 months ago that he said, "Don't think people aren't watching what you're doing." He said, "There wouldn't be that much no-till around here if we hadn't seen what you're doing."
As people see for themselves the new efficiency and the improved productivity of these ranches, they begin to understand that a balanced approach of business and environment just makes sense. This group of ranch owners is enthusiastic and realistic. They understand that new methods of ranching and farming are essential if they are to continue doing the work they love.
We are truly fortunate because so few people now have that opportunity in this country. It used to be that everybody had a father or a grandfather or an uncle that had a farm, and that's not true anymore. But we have this opportunity to do what is truly built into us, that we love, which is to be a part of the soil and to make it profitable at the same time. That's something that very, very few people have an opportunity to do.
For 12 years, regional cattle operations have been recognized for their achievements as stewards of the land. Over the past decade, environmental responsibility has become more and more a practical approach for running a successful farm or ranch. These 7 operations, in every part of the country, invested in their futures because they understood their place in American history. They saw their operations at a crossroad, threatened by old inefficient methods and runaway costs. Even 3rd and 4th generation ranchers knew the time had come to replace some of the techniques that had been used by their great-grandfathers. But it isn't easy. This is a business built on tradition. But it's also a business threatened by new competition, consolidation, and regulation. The Environmental Stewardship Awards aren't just about protecting the land. They're about protecting a vital part of the American way of life. In the years to come, American ranchers will continue to feed the world. And with new methods of production, they'll also make it a better place to live.
I have stood on the mountain, I have walked the valleys down below, I have called the prairie's name, sung the delta's sweet refrain. I have touched America's soul, I have touched America's soul. There's a town in Mississippi where a man works his fingers to the bone. Then he thanks the stars at night for the blessings of this life. He has touched